let's just have this be the cold intro. Scott needs a place to live. If you're listening to the pod and you want the Mr. Scott Eddy, the man, the myth, the legend at your hotel, at your short-term rental, holler in the comments. That dude, you should just pimp yourself out. You should just be like, now that you're back on LinkedIn, just like write a LinkedIn post, say, hey, I'm available from these days. Come and get me while you can. I bet your DMs would be flooded, man.
It'll be like LinkedIn Tinder. Like LinkedIn Tinder had a baby. That's what it would be.
Nobody's going to swipe on the wrong direction with you. Nobody.
Social platforms are going to be the new OTAs.
Whoever owns the moment of intent controls the bookings.
Are we going to get a bubble? There are thousands of hotels with hundreds of rooms that still need to be filled.
We're going to be focused on this independent, cool lifestyle and luxury, but I have to market like a bank.
I think that we can give our 2 cents into the stories that are going on.
Will be in your ears and on your screens every Friday morning.
Let's do it.
Let's roll.
This is the gold, bro. This is the gold.
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the show. Hey, right before we dive into the episode today, I want to tell you a little bit about Journey. Not because Journey makes this episode of This Week in Hospitality and every episode of This Week in Hospitality possible, but also because I'm on the founding team there. And I want to share a little bit about why I joined Journey, what we're building, and really extend an invitation to you all to, first and foremost, become Journey members yourself, and then also consider applying to be a part of the Journey Alliance. So let me explain very, very quickly what all of this means and why you should care about it. So first and foremost, the reason I joined the founding team at Journey is because I believe something pretty deeply, that the best places to stay in the world typically aren't the biggest ones. It's typically not the flagged properties. They're smaller boutique properties, properties that evoke a sense of deep soul, character, a story, right? We've all had these travel experiences where we stay in this property where we feel like the operator, the staff knows us, right? We feel taken care of. The temperature in the room is just right. They saw that we were struggling with our bags and we had couple kids with us, right? And they offered to entertain the kids with some fun little toy that they had stashed behind the front desk, right? We've all had experiences like this. And those experiences are notably different than the experiences that you might get at a standard Marriott or Hilton or Hyatt hotel. The reason why we built Journey is because we believe that the best operators in the world are not properly equipped to compete in this evolving, ever-changing environment that we live in today. I mean, you hear buzzwords all the time, right? What is AI going to do to the little guy? And we believe that actually AI empowers the little guy. AI empowers boutique and independent properties in a way that historically they haven't been empowered. We believe, like, for the very first time, these properties with soul can actually compete in a very meaningful way against flagged and more traditional properties. So what is Journey? If you're not familiar, Journey is a loyalty and guest intelligence platform built specifically for independent hotels, residences, and high-touch hospitality brands. I like to tell folks that Journey becomes your partner in all things AI, your partner in enabling guests to make it a very easy choice, quite frankly, to stay at your property, right? The best independent properties versus the properties where they might have status, right? Or get points or get rewards at staying at, those being, the chain hotels, of course. So what Journey does is we become your official loyalty program. We enable travelers to earn points and rewards by staying at your property, right? And it's not really just about the points. What it's really about is helping give consumers a reason to choose the boutique property, right? And make it an easy choice. So they're not giving up, status that they have with Marriott. They're not giving up the opportunity for a great room at a Ritz-Carlton. They get to pick your hotel, which is the better hotel, and also still earn status points and rewards for picking you. We believe very strongly that the best hotels in the world, the best residences of the world, are ones built by operators who care about the story of the place, right? And so we want to help you tell that story. We want to help give you the intelligence to make every guest your best guest. We're living in a dynamic world where, for the very first time, you truly can personalize every experience, every part of the stay, down to the individual traveler. And Journey is your partner in helping make all of that possible. Now, Journey's very curated, right? We really do want to partner with the best, and so we don't take on any hotel that asks to join our program. In fact, we turn down about 60-70% of folks who do apply to be a part of the alliance. But if you're listening to this episode today, if you like This Week in Hospitality, and you have an independent property that you believe has soul and a story to tell, we'd love for you to apply to be a part of the Journey Alliance. You can do so at journey.com/alliance. And if you reference that you are a listener and a fan of This Week in Hospitality, we're going to move you to the top of the curation review list. And then also, if you are accepted into the Alliance and you join the Alliance program, we've got a special gift and really exciting opportunity to share with you for those who qualify and join the Alliance. So if you want to learn more about what we're building at Journey and why we're building it and why we believe now is the time to build a program that enables you and empowers you with deeper guest insights, right? Doesn't hoard guest data, which the traditional OTAs do, right? And the traditional loyalty programs do, then I want to invite you to check out journey.com/alliance. You can connect with one of my team members there, or, you can just comment on this episode wherever you're listening to this podcast, or find me on LinkedIn, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. But I really encourage you to check out Journey. Again, Journey makes this episode and every episode of This Week in Hospitality possible. All right, guys, enjoy the show. Check out Journey and let me know what you think. Take care. Bye. All right, guys, let's go to the first story of the week. Edwin, I want to ping you here first. This is a story you shared in the group chat. And the synopsis really is lenders, at least in theory, are suddenly more bullish on hotel F&B than they have been in recent years. For years, hotel food and beverage was seen as a necessary evil, capital intensive, operationally complex, and often margin dilutive. But that narrative is shifting. So there was a new piece in Hotel Investment Today this week that highlighted how lenders are increasingly willing to underwrite F&B heavy hotel concepts, viewing them less as cost centers and more as drivers of differentiated demand and also local relevance. In many cases, strong F&B programs are now helping hotels win financing, not lose it. This comes as hotels lean harder into experience-driven revenue, where restaurants, bars, and social spaces aren't just amenities, but they're part of the core product. Obviously, this is helping, or the thinking here is that this will drive TRevPAR. But Edwin, I wanted to go to you here first. What do you think is happening here? Why are folks more bullish on F&B today than they were even a couple of years ago?
I cheers this on. I mean, this is inevitable in the times we're living in, right? So when I saw this story, I thought I had to go back to the beginning of when I started, and probably a bit further than that. So you had hotels where the owner cooked for the guests. Then brands got involved, and everything started to become homogenized. And I don't remember, or I remember probably the older listener, when everything had to be the same. You were doing good as a brand when your Caesar salad dressing was the same in one hotel versus the other hotel. Remember those times? And then we got into buffets, and it had to be, mile-long buffets, and some hotels did really well, and some didn't, and the quality started going down, and none of these restaurants really made any money. So then people started cutting costs. And what happened? We all lost our faith in hotel restaurants. People in offices started thinking of concepts, and the concepts were all-day dining and crowd pleasers with dishes from around the world that you ate in your own city and not necessarily anywhere else. And everybody just sort of lost faith. And then people started getting guest chefs in, or partners with local celebrity chefs. And a lot of them, I remember contracts being signed where the chefs were incentivized on top line, not on bottom line, so they never made any money. And hotel dining and hotel restaurants just started to get a really bad name. I think there's also been a massive change, of course, in, when you went abroad and you tried new food. Nowadays, in most cities, you can get food from Ethiopia, from Sri Lanka, from any Asian country. So there's very little more to discover when you go to another city. I think that's a big change too. But in the times we live right now, where we're looking for connection, and hotels, sub 120 rooms are becoming the hot ticket, and people want to connect with the local community, and they have to be neighborhood hotels, and it just makes total sense that those hotels have great F&B, because you're not going to connect with anybody in your local neighborhood if you sit in your hotel room. So the only place that makes sense is having great F&B, whether it's a bar concept or a restaurant concept in your hotel, because that's going to draw and put you really on the map in your local community. And that's the connection people are looking for. So I think it's inevitable, fantastic. I'm a big food and beverage fan. I think they make a great restaurant or even a good bar makes a massive difference for your property. And I'm glad people are starting to see the value in it, because even if they might not be your profit drivers, it does help with your ADR, and it does help with the value of your asset. And it's ancillary revenue. Right? And just making revenue on your rooms is just not going to be enough anymore.
It's interesting. I was recently in Lexington and then also Atlanta, and I was staying at these beautiful boutique properties in both locations, but was talking to some random locals. Went to a fun little workout class, and then I was like at dinner, and I was talking to people, and I was asking folks like, "Hey, like where are your like favorite places like to eat or drink around town?" And both people, the first like in both cities, they pointed to the hotel, restaurant, and bar in each location. It's like, oh, have you heard about this place? I was like, oh, actually, I think that's literally that's the restaurant in my hotel. Like, and so I just thought that was interesting. Whereas again, I even remember maybe this was a little bit longer, maybe like 10 years ago, right? To your point, Edwin, like you would never eat at the hotel. Like it was all garbage. And I do feel like there's certainly this trend, at least anecdotally, that is shifting. And so when I saw this story too, I was excited because it confirmed some of my suspicion, right? That there is more creativity and more investment happening in these spaces. Ben, any insight from your lens on, you obviously are, fundraising for Baya. Is there a difference in fundraising from Baya? Because I believe Baya will have an F&B concept. Is there any difference you're seeing in investors' interest versus like, one of your Onera projects?
It's certainly a question mark, right? There's still some fear, I think, on the investor side and sort of this legacy idea that F&B is a loss leader. But the fact that I'm doing it with Baya, I think is sort of an indication maybe of this evolution, and just recognizing that it's like such a integral part of the guest experience. So like with Onera, I was afraid of it, didn't want to touch it. That was 5 years ago, just based on, the fact that it was always framed as a loss leader and just basically an amenity for guests. With Baya, it's very central to what we're doing, being a farm hotel, farm to table cuisine. And I have a partner who's an F&B specialist in Steve Turk. So I feel like much better about creating a concept that is an amazing product, but also like has some profitability to it. So look, I think that for a long time, F&B was a cost center because so many hotels were treating it like an afterthought. They were treating it like just, something that was required to tick the box for guest service. But I think it's changed when you're actually creating restaurants that are demand drivers for your property. And that's what I think you were speaking to, Zach, as well. Something that has its own story, that attracts the local public. So they're referring their friends to stay at that hotel because they know about it from the restaurant. And in general, I'll talk more about this in Spice of the Week, but I think hoteliers have to be way more focused on how to manufacture their own demand and not just try to capture what's already out there. So this is one great way to do that.
Well said. Scott, anything you'd add to the story?
Yeah, I can just double back on what Ben said. Steve is a great guy, good friend, and he knows the F&B inside and out. But on this topic, this isn't about food. This is about relevance. If your dining scene is strong, you attract locals, you create energy, you generate content, you give people a reason to choose your hotel before they even look at the room. If your dining is weak, you're invisible. Most operators, listen, yes, is it getting more? Yes, the needle's moving from 1% to 3%, of course. But most operators still don't get it. They manage F&B like a cost center instead of a growth engine. They cut staff, they shrink menus, they play defense. That mindset kills you. And the smartest hotels, they're building destinations within the hotel. Their restaurant stands on its own. Their bar stands on its own. People go there, whether they're staying there or not. That's the shift. If your F&B cannot survive without hotel guests, it's not a concept. It's a liability.
Yeah, listen, I completely agree with you, Scott. I'm working with a property here in Washington at the moment where I was in the elevator with a guest the other day, And he said, we got in touch, are you enjoying your stay? And he said, my boss and his entire team is staying in another hotel, and they're coming to mine for food and for meetings in the restaurant. Because it's such a booming restaurant for the local neighborhood, where you find 6-7 reasons, from coffee to breakfast to meetings to working solo to then gather others. It's a neighborhood restaurant. It's big, it's bold, and everybody wants to come to yours. And I think you're absolutely right, Scott. I mean, it's all about relevance.
You know what's funny is, if you're in like a booming area, metropolitan area like South Florida, you got Fort Lauderdale, you got Palm Beach, you got Miami, and yes, can you have a successful hotel dining spot? Of course, especially if you have a sexy rooftop spot, right? But man, you're going up against the best of the best of the best in F&B. I mean, we have the biggest revenue restaurant in the US right now, Mila. I mean, these places do the revenue of some small hotels. I mean, it is unbelievable, the competition here. So you have to treat, just like I said, it's like a destination within your hotel. You cannot treat it like a lobby restaurant, or else you're dead.
And I want to pose a quick question here. Can anyone name a hotel that's viewed as like a top performing hotel in any given, major market, that the restaurant isn't like a primary demand driver? The local community goes to that restaurant even if they're not staying at the hotel. Like, I can't even think of one in Austin that doesn't have at least one restaurant that's drawing massive crowd from the local area.
I mean, I can give you spots outside of the US. So here's a quick example. Okay. I was just in Bangkok, right? And I was staying at Labua, which is, the movie of The Hangover. So they literally they're one of, I think, 3 hotels in the world that has two Michelin star restaurants under one roof. That restaurant is literally sold out every night. Yeah, they're tourists, but there's a lot of locals that live there, that dine there a lot. The rooftop bar that you see in the movie, nobody goes there but tourists. But it's crazy. I think the number was 3,000 people visit that bar per day, even in low season. I think I said that a couple of weeks ago or a couple months ago. But there are some, I can also name some in Lisbon, some in Barcelona, a lot in London. But yeah, it's very, very difficult. And as usual, the US, yes, we're the leaders in marketing. We're the leaders in providing budgets. We're the leader in so many different things, but we are so behind when it comes to hotel marketing. Even though we spend more, there's more creativity overseas, and we are the slowest movers. It's very strange.
Ben, I think there's also cities where hotel dining is just not a thing. I mean, Barcelona, nobody eats out in restaurants. Maybe a handful that will go to some Michelin star restaurants, and the owner chose it just because they know everything else will fill, and it's a pride thing, right? But there are cities where you just don't do that. I mean, Amsterdam is slowly turning around. Was never a thing. Barcelona wasn't a thing. Rome. I mean, there's a lot of those cities where you go to the local restaurants, and hotels just fell behind, and it's hopefully slowly changing, but it was complicated.
It's interesting too. I think. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. But, there's also places like the places where they got you, like the place where the hotel is the destination, like places like the Maldives. You're not going anywhere. You're eating there because it's all individual islands. I have a client in Maui, but they're not on the side where all the hotels are. They're on the north side, and they have 75 acres. People eat there. So unless they got you and it's like so inconvenient to leave, like then you're basically held prisoner to their F&B. But if you're in a booming place where you have lots of competition, watch out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like there's also this, and this is maybe more in more boutique properties, but I have two stories. One in Toronto, there's an awesome property called the Annex there. Ryan Colleen, who's a friend, has that hotel, and then the Manchester in Lexington, and both of them, what they did is they partnered with in the Manchester's case, it's a what's the celebrity chef? Top Chef. There we go. Top Chef show, right? She was like a competitor on Top Chef. She had was known in the community before, but they brought her in to help like launch their restaurant. She happened to like get on the show, I think like 6 months into them opening up the restaurant or something like that. So she's been able to ride that wave, and they've, the community has really rallied around her, et cetera. But in the annex, same thing. There was a local restaurateur. He was younger. His family had, I guess, had a couple of Italian restaurants in the city, but years ago, he's like a 20-something dude. He had like a pizza truck in the back of his truck, but he had this huge like Instagram following. And so like the annex team was like, oh, hey, like, have you ever thought about doing something bigger? Sure enough, like he had. So like they partnered with him to launch their restaurant, Raffaella. And what was interesting is like part of it, right, was like an audience play, right? Which I think is so cool, right? So like you're, again, way easier to do. The annex has like 25 keys. They're a small hotel, but like really cool to see folks getting creative of like, we see this in tech and startups, right? People that have audiences basically being co-founders of businesses just because of their audience or their influence, right? But like we're seeing some of these things at a much smaller scale, I think, happening with F&B, which is great, especially for smaller independent properties who do rely on these establishments to help drive demand.
One more final comment on this. So in my opinion, in the US, there's nobody that does F&B better than this guy by the name of Steve Palmer.
Oh.
Steve Palmer owns, well, Star is very good as well, but Steve Palmer owns a group called Indigo Group or Indigo Concept, whatever it is. And he's based in like South Carolina, North Carolina, Charleston area, but he has like 14 or 16 restaurants. He's got like 6 hotels. The way this guy looks at hospitality is absolute genius. I mean, he does it. If anybody wants to model themselves after somebody, or if a hotel is watching this, I promise you just watch what Indigo is doing, and they are unbelievable. His brain is on another level when it comes to F&B. It's crazy.
Indigo Road, the Indigo Road.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. But number one, he treats his employees like family, and he treats them with respect. And they will take a bullet for him. I mean, this guy, Steve Palmer, is unbelievable. Actually, he would be a great guest on the show. Great guest.
Skyline Lodge. Okay. Yeah. Post house.
I think you just secured yourself a stay for the next.
Yeah. Let's go.
We'll just clip this and send it right to Steve, right? And the first part, Scott's looking for a place to stay. For a few weeks.
1 and 1 is.
That's great. That's great. I love it. Well, lots here, and let's continue to like as we hear stories in our own day-to-days of cool concepts like this or more Indigo Roads. Let's shout them out. I love it. All right, let's move on to our next story here. So Hyatt is making a very deliberate pivot, according to Skift, and arguably admitting where it fell behind with respect to its competitors, Marriott and Hilton. So Hyatt is aggressively expanding into secondary and tertiary U.S. markets with a pipeline of 30-plus select service and extended stay hotels, which they're estimating would be about 4,000 rooms across the Southeast. Notably, half of its U.S. signings last year were in markets where it had 0 previous presence. This strategy hinges on 3 of their, more economy brands, if you will: Hyatt Studios, Hyatt Select, and Unscripted. Which I love how Hyatt, by the way, positions Unscripted as soft lifestyle. I like when I saw that positioning, I was just dying laughing because I was like, so what? Like what? There's like hard lifestyle. Like if you're like,
some of us have had a hard lifestyle, but I'm not sure. I
was like, could they not have come up with a better word, man? Like, oh my god, it was just really funny. Anyhow, Unscripted is their soft lifestyle brand. The bigger story here is Hyatt averages just 4 hotels per market in these secondary and tertiary markets versus their competitors like Marriott and Hilton average 14. So I want to go to you, Ben, here. We've talked ad nauseum and many others as of late have even talked about the only hotels worth investing in right now are experiential, are luxury. We hear developers saying this. Curious to hear your thoughts on Hyatt's take here. Obviously, we spent a lot of time talking about independent, smaller, operators as well, and things are a little bit different, obviously, when you're working with a significant flag. But I am curious, what were your thoughts on this story? Any insights that you thought stood out in particular, or is this kind of just par for the course?
So I don't think this story is about brand dilution. I think it's an honest admission by Hyatt that they brought a knife to a gunfight when it comes to distribution, when it comes to Marriott and Hilton, right? You can't compete when you have 4 properties in market and they have 14, 15, 20 properties. So given that Hyatt is competing with the big boys, right? Hilton and Marriott, like they have to have a certain amount of flags in every market in order to compete. Now, with that said, as you know, I mean, I'm certainly more in favor of like upscale experiential properties, more boutique and lifestyle. So I just think they're different things. Like this is purely a distribution play for Hyatt, giving their members the ability to use points and book and earn points and be in the loyalty ecosystem wherever they go. I also think it's an interesting strategy and harkens back to something we talked about maybe a few weeks ago, how like secondary and tertiary markets are becoming hotter spots for travelers. So, some of these lesser known markets are becoming hotspots, not only for domestic travelers, but also international travelers. And for Hyatt to have such a dearth of options in some of those second and tertiary markets puts them at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Edwin? Any thoughts here?
No, I agree. It's a distribution issue, right? But there's a couple of things here. If you don't show up in any agentic search in a city, you've lost, right? Whether you have, and we talked about this a couple of times, if you have 14 properties or you've got 4, at least if you've got some, you show up. I think that's one understanding why you want to go to these markets. I agree with you. There's a huge appetite, I think, around the globe for secondary and tertiary cities, for new destinations, for people to evolve in and to grow in. I think it might also be a really good way of testing if there's appetite for a different type of brand or a different type of hotel within your brand, because these are all very easy to sign on. Franchises. You don't need to invest anything, and if you've got a property in town and you've got your entire loyalty program asking for more, it might be a great way to see, hey, do we need another property or another level of property in this city? So clever play.
A different type of hotel, soft lifestyle, perhaps even.
Yeah. Versus a hard luxury one.
Yeah, I love it. So I sent the story to my uncle, who he was like a Verizon exec, and way back when he was at Verizon, they had some like deal with Hyatt where like all their executives had to stay in Hyatt hotels or whatever. So I was just curious to like get his quick take on it. So one of the things he said, which I thought was an interesting insight, he's like, I mean, I have no idea, but like my initial thought is Hyatt has this perception of being a little bit more of an elevated experience than, a Marriott or Hilton in the general public, right? They feel a little bit more exclusive. They're obviously like, they're well known, but they're not as well known. And so his take was if they're entering secondary and tertiary markets, it's more of like, if you're a consumer that is looking for a budget lifestyle, as I'll call it, sort of experience, and you see a Hyatt right next to a Marriott or Hilton, you'll choose the Hyatt because you've either heard you've heard nice things about the brand, right, and or it's just different than the Marriott or the Hilton. So again, no hard data to back that up, but I thought that was an interesting take. Like, hey, maybe it really is like a leveraging of their brand, even though it is a more economy stay in markets that are potentially attracting consumers that historically would have only stayed at a Hilton or a Marriott. So now they have a third option that they might perceive as better for whatever reason.
And the unscripted are upscale, and they're not budget. So I think that there's a difference there.
Scott, any final word on this story?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't sexy, but it's smart. But it's smart, and it's something that they have to do. They're playing the distribution game. They're trying to be everywhere, because if you're not in the market, you don't exist. Simple. They've been trying to hide behind this for years, comparing to Marriott and Hilton, and now they're making up for it aggressively. They're leaning into formats that are easier to roll out, easier to convert, and more predictable from a revenue standpoint. That's not about brand storytelling. It's about math. Now, the risk is obvious. When you scale that fast, you lose control of the experience. So what's going to happen is the same thing that's happened with Marriott. When they buy these brands that are unbelievable, like the W Hotel, like Ritz-Carlton, like you're going to lose relevance and you're going to lose your brand soul when this happens. So I was thinking as you guys were talking, like there's also another way that you could play this. If you only have 4 hotels in that market and you're going up against somebody who has 14 in that market, you don't necessarily always have to scale with more properties. You could also lean into social media and scale that way as well. If you tell a better story, regardless of the 14 to 4, you're also going to be more places than those 14 because they do very static, horrible marketing. And you're telling more of a story. I mean, as you guys know, I'm all in. I'm 100% on brand storytelling on social media, which I know Ben is as well. And I mean, I just think that when you think scale, you think growing by properties in this industry. And I think everybody thinks that, but there's also the marketing scale, you know?
What are the rules? And I feel like an idiot even asking this, but from a franchise perspective, you guys would know this better than me. Can I launch, like if I own a Hyatt Unscripted in Atlanta, can I launch at Hyatt Unscripted Atlanta, right? Like as an Instagram account, like how much control does the owner, right, and or the management company have with respect to social?
There's
None?
brand guidelines for every brand. Every umbrella has their own list of, and to be honest, they're very, very strict. Like
Sure,
very,
but-
very, very strict.
Too strict.
Too
And so I can't like launch my own Instagram account for that specific.
No, you
can.
can.
It just has to fit within those guidelines, right?
Sure.
So
But someone's
you're
got
very-
like
you're
someone's
very-
over
go ahead.
someone's watching me all the time basically. So I can launch at Hyatt Atlanta or whatever it is, right? But then like, you know, I either have to approve my content by somebody at corporate before it goes out, or somebody's watching me, and if
I'm not
they see
sure.
something I don't like, it gets shut down. How does it work?
So you don't have to approve every post, but they're gonna come knocking if you break those brand guidelines for sure. That's kind of how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, pretty much every hotel, branded or not, is gonna sort of run their own individual social media account.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? Like maybe a project we should do in all of our free time. We should analyze, right, these like, and maybe a little bit easier to do at like the local like branded hotel level, and just kind of compare like for branded hotels in particular, which specific hotels and or regions and or accounts are crushing it, and compare them to like, again, the same brand but like maybe in like a different market. That'd be kind of fun. You know, compare and contrast what passes the Scott and Ben test versus the ones that don't. Because obviously, if you're an independent, you have total flexibility. But you know, the vast majority of hotel owners, right, and or management companies like own and or operate at least some branded properties. So the social media commentary that you just shared, Scott, which I 100% agree with, might just be significantly harder in those instances to use as sort of a growth channel.
Having said that, wasn't there just a study done that showed like 62% of the hotels in the world are independents versus the flags?
I think
Yeah, we
globally,
discussed that, but
yes.
that included, all the 3, 4, 5
B&Bs.
bedroom
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that skews the numbers a bit, but
Yeah, of course.
yeah, I guess, Scott, my one question around that is like, how does that get implemented, right? Because this is it's all at the individual property level. So if Hyatt's trying to achieve scale, whatever, more distribution, increase revenue at existing hotels, like, do they supplement with a Hyatt budget for each property? Do you do more content? Like, how do you see that actually playing out?
I think they have to do something that they would never do: build out individual teams, build out a brand team for each individual brand, not each individual property, but each brand, and really go all in. Like we were speaking about Kimpton. Kimpton, yeah, it lost somewhat of its value or like their brand soul when they got taken over, but they kept their brand team, they kept everything, and they're still somewhat Kimpton, even after all these years of being under the big flag. But I think it's possible, but it takes an investment, and again, it's an investment, not a cost. And it's crazy that they just don't see this. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just me.
No, I think you're right. It would be interesting to I believe like the franchise model in general, right? Especially as distribution gets more dynamic and more interesting than across, just how people discover anything, quite frankly, where attention is is secured and retained just gets more dynamic. I think franchises across any business are going to have to do a significantly better job at helping equip their franchise owners and operators with social assets. And like you can totally tell, like you see this all the time, right? You go to some of these hotels, Instagrams, and you can tell like, oh, this is the same image that was used across like 15 different Hyatts or 15 different Hiltons, right? Totally. And you can tell like that doesn't look like Atlanta, right? Like at all or whatever it is. And it's just and it's so like there's obviously something that is happening, but it's so minimal. And so I think you're 100% Scott, right, Scott. Like I think the future flags, right? Flags that want to attract and retain the next generation of owners, if they're smart, will find ways to be really significantly more dynamic and will have tons and tons and tons of libraries of content for folks that are all on brand and help and consult with the hotel owners on, hey, what is working in your market right now? What are the hottest trends happening in your community at this exact moment? And then let our team like put together some assets for you as best as we can. Won't be as good as anyone who's on the ground with you day in and day out, but I think that these ecosystems will have to get much more dynamic. Otherwise, I think over time, right, the relevancy in the reason for choosing the flag, I think will diminish.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, guys. Before we go to another couple stories here, I want to go to Rumorville. So, Edwin, you are not the first person, by the way, but you were the most recent person who mentioned to me or to us over the group chat that there might be still some murmurs of Rosewood being for sale. I heard that from another person earlier this week. Curious if you've got any juice for us.
So it is still parked in Rumorville. It is not left the parking lot since we last spoke about this. But yeah, I think it's a bit more than a rumor. I think the family is done. I think they want to sell. That's at least what I'm hearing. It started with some buildings, some assets. If you recall, we discussed this probably a month and a half ago. But I'm understanding now. Again, it hasn't left the parking lot yet, but it's coming from too many angles of where I'm hearing that the family may just sell out, and who knows who the next company will be to own Rosewood.
So
we should do a bet on this show.
We should do a little poly market. Yeah.
So going back to my investment banking days, you buy on the rumor and sell on the news. This thing is not going to hit. Like, it's not going to be officially announced as a rumor. It is just going to come out one day saying it's sold. I promise you, they're in the back. They're doing the deals as we speak. They're probably closer than anybody can imagine. I mean,
who, Scott?
Who do you think though?
I don't know, but I will say, I really hope they go the route of Aman. So Aman, the background of lawsuits and ownerships and sells and, new owners and this and that has never disrupted Aman's marketing strategy and their soul.
Yeah. So you're saying we need a single buyer who's going to love it and take them on and not a Marriott or Hilton buying the brand.
Yeah. I mean, if one of the big boys buys it, it's just gone overnight. I mean, unless they keep the same brand team, because they're such a sexy brand. They're such a sexy brand. I mean, their property in San Miguel de Allende in Mexico is one of the most beautiful properties I've ever been to in my life in the world. It is so unbelievable. I was fortunate enough that we did a content shoot for them during the pandemic. So there was nobody around. It was amazing. Mexico really never closed. And it was just unbelievable. But I mean, talk about raw beauty and really, really encompassing the local lifestyle into the brand. I mean, they do it right. They do it right.
I'm gunning for Four Roses, Four Seasons, and Rosewood coming together.
Oh, that's creative.
That is my. It's not my bet, but it's my hope.
Yeah.
If they can't retain their independence, yeah.
So I certainly would love to see what Scott is pushing for happen. I wonder if they really want to sell and they want to maximize the number. I don't know who's going to be able to pay more than one of the big brands in terms of the value to them. Unless you have I don't know, something like the Saudi PIF deal with Live Golf. They're just going to overpay because they have some other motive of relevance. Maybe you have that happen.
Or one of the billionaires in Florida you live so closely by, I understand.
Sure. Somebody that just wants a legacy sort of, vanity asset, whatever. I mean, that I could see, but otherwise I think it's probably going to go to a big brand. And my bet, I don't know anything. I'm not hearing any of these rumors that Edwin probably is behind the scenes, but I'd put my money on Marriott personally. I just think it would do the most for them.
Edwin, you haven't cast your bet?
Oh, I brought the rumor. Yeah. I'm waiting to see what you would.
Playing it safe.
All right. Well, any other takers? What
about you, Zach? I'm the only one that threw something out. Come on.
I said Four Seasons. Okay.
Oh, Four Roses.
I did say it's not my bet.
Right. Four Seasons will stick to their own brand. That's it.
Yeah.
They're very clever.
It's too directly competitive.
Doesn't Bill Gates control Four Seasons now?
Does he? Oh, I don't even know.
I think he owns 60% or something like that. If I'm not mistaken,
that surprised me.
Yeah, it remains to see what happens
so
when
we can say whatever we want because it's Rumorville. So
I'm gonna throw Jeff Bezos too. I got two. I got two numbers: Jeff Bezos or Marriott.
Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I actually won't say that. We'll come back to this later. Cool. All right. Next rumor in Rumorville. This is actually less of a rumor. But it still is a story that not enough people are talking about. Actually, this was a listener who tipped us off to this story. So Lodge Camp, which for those who might not be familiar, was, Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like they were not maybe an OG outdoor lifestyle brand, but they were one of the most compelling brands in the last several years that really helped kind of drive this lifestyle driven concept. They had 17 different locations. They positioned itself as a modern alternative to traditional hotels. This was something that all of my friends in outdoor hospitality were talking about. I knew several folks on the team there as well. And they're going under. It's rumored / again, hasn't officially been reported, but there's loads of lawsuits. It sounds like despite the brand driving a lot of early momentum, Lodge really appeared to struggle with scaling. So they had incredibly high renovation costs. I think the model was buy underappreciated assets, similar to some other folks in near national parks and other outdoor rich areas, and then renovate the properties while also continuing to rent them out so that you weren't closed for significant periods of time. But sounds like this just kind of failed miserably. I don't know if they had some serious investment pretty recently, actually, in early 2025. And it sounds like they are just closing down all locations at this juncture. Again, the company hasn't said this directly. You can still go and book a stay there as of this morning when I checked. So, but Ben, curious if you have any insight into this story, given your connections in outdoor hospitality. What do you think went wrong here?
So I don't have too many direct connections here. I mean, I spoke to Kale once. We actually talked to him about maybe doing some of their marketing way back when. Look, I think this is the strategy around we're going to buy these sort of mediocre hotels near national parks and outdoor and throw some lipstick on them and jack the rate. And I think it still remains to be seen if that strategy is going to work. I mean, I know Outbound is pursuing that as well.
Trailborne.
Trailborne. Yeah. So Lodge is the first one to go down. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the rest of them fare. Scale is always an issue, especially with, I don't think they were operators that had scaled hospitality assets before. So maintaining quality and building operations in all these different disparate markets, especially rural markets, very hard to hire, right? So I think it's probably mostly an operational scaling issue. They scaled a little bit too quickly, didn't keep the operations tight enough, probably struggled with staffing in these markets. I have to imagine we always have with rural markets. So I think it's probably as simple as that with LOGE.
Ben, do you think because you're from I don't know how it is exactly in the US, but from a European perspective, do you think anything has to do also with the way we sort of changed how we use these kind of properties post COVID, and how that change has gone through another route now? I mean, the amount of friends. What I'm trying to say, the amount of friends that I have that could work from home, work from anywhere, could stay on these properties Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, pull a 6 hour work day from these properties, then enjoy it. I mean, in my circles, everybody's going back to the office. And what I'm seeing with these kind of properties in Europe is that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, brilliant. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, can't fill them. So all of a sudden you have a very fragmented source of business, and I think that's a trouble, at least with a lot of these properties in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think probably what's happening here, and you also I think are seeing it with AutoCamp and some of these other players, even outside of this more traditional hotel outdoor product, is that there's this big COVID boom, right? It just massive accelerant on outdoor hospitality. Everything was super inflated. They probably bought a bunch of assets, unfortunately, when they were scaling at that time, when things were inflated, and then they invested all this money into the property, and things came down considerably, and then you're just kind of in a tough spot at that point.
And everybody else jumped on it at the same time.
Yeah. I bet you that's likely what happened, just given the timeline of LOGE, right? They probably overpaid for a bunch of assets in like 22, 23. We spent a couple of years trying to make them work, and then ultimately the curtain call came that they just couldn't overcome the basis, what they paid, what they put into the assets during peak COVID.
Yeah, it's I couldn't agree with you guys more. It'll be interesting to see how this fares with other folks who are pursuing similar strategies. I do think, for what it's worth, as we've talked about several times on this program too, I want this concept to work. I want folks to continue to lean into these alternative, renovated, experiential properties in kind of key outdoor markets. As we've talked about too, the last time I went to National Park, anyways, all the local hotels were really more like motels. And so I love the industry. I love the segment. I love the investment that is being poured into it. I think it's validation for many folks who have been trying to build concepts in the space over the last several years. But we need the winner. We need to see an outcome that's not just like postcard cabins, right? Formerly, what were they called before again? Getaway. Like that. I think that was like a subpar outcome for as far as everyone's concerned, right? So rooting for Trailborn and others who are still in the game. Let's move to our next story around the World Cup. Scott, I'm going to go to you here. So we're less than 100 days from the start of the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and sentiment is shifting. So according to CoStar, while forecasts still call for 1.7% RevPAR lift nationally and about 12.5% in host markets, the reality on the ground is far more mixed. So it was reported this week that some hotels are seeing FIFA room blocks returned with little to no pickup. One operator reported just 15% of reserved rooms actually booked. Demand is compressing into 3 to 5 day windows around matches, not extended stays. And suburban hotels are outperforming urban markets due to pricing. Curious to get your thoughts here, Scott. Did we all just kind of overestimate the demand of the FIFA World Cup coming to North America? Is this a geopolitical situation here, given everything, given the war in Iran and just conflict in the Middle East more generally? Is this a warning sign for future mega events such as the Olympics? What's your take here?
No, I have a few thoughts. Being in one of the host cities down here in Miami, this is not something that people book months and months in advance. This is a very last minute. It's not a last minute decision. And again, In Europe, they might book it 6 months or a year in advance. Here in the US, I mean, we've never had the political situation
Right.
that is so aggressive right now. And I can't remember the last time I saw a World Cup conversation that didn't get political in the past 6 months. So is it geopolitical? 100%. But you still will see bumps. Every hotel in South Florida will be sold out. ADRs will go up 20, 30%, in and surrounding all the games. So it's all going to, if you're looking for stats now, you're not going to get it. This happens every single time the industry overhypes a specific event. Everyone expects a massive surge. Everyone prices aggressively. Everyone builds in their forecasts around it. And then reality hits. Travel behavior around these things, when it's involving political situations, it's changed. People aren't booking long stays around events anymore. They're optimizing for the experience, not the destination. They fly in, they attend what they want to attend, and then they leave. Shorter stays, tighter booking windows, more price sensitivities. And when hotels push rates too far, like here, they disappear. It doesn't just stretch, it snaps. Then you add the layer of global uncertainty, cost of travel, and suddenly that guaranteed demand, it's not guaranteed at all. The industry can't still use the old playbooks for a completely new consumer.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. It feels like since like post-COVID, in-person events, like by and large, in-person events are not the market makers that they used to be. I mean, like Coachella is nothing compared to what it was pre-COVID, right? South by Southwest, same thing. And then you have Taylor Swift concerts moving entire economies. So it's like certain things are still, driving that crazy demand. But by and large, I mean, the majority of events I've seen since post-COVID, it's not driving what it used to. It's not driving the compression. And it may also be supply. Like maybe, people are still relying on that old playbook and, spinning up a bunch of supply for these events. And then so there's less compression because of that. But I do find it interesting since COVID, it seems like across the board, these prices are not compressing for most of these in-person events.
So I'll add one more thing. In markets like South Florida, right? We have a heavy European and especially Latin America presence already that live here. So we could sell out games and it won't affect hotel nights at all.
Yeah.
So, just something else to think about.
Yeah. The one in Austin that does still seem to move the needle is Formula One, but even that is kind of tempered off a little bit too. So
yeah,
but that's international audience, right?
It's just novelty, right? Too. So like once Coachella, if you've done Coachella once, right? Like how many people are going to go do it again? And it's trendy still. People still talk about it, but I do think it's lost its spark. F1, right? I think maybe has peaked or, and maybe it's still riding its peak, but a few years ago, no one was talking, like before, like the Netflix show, like no one was talking about this. Right now it's had huge moments. It's become,
but you got to understand one thing. You got to understand one thing. F1 was actually bleeding before Liberty Media bought them. And now that it's owned by a U.S. entity, they put the marketing engine behind there. And now, you got the Netflix, you got it. It's going to expand to more U.S. markets. And yes, does it still have relevance overseas? Of course, people are nuts over F1. I've been to, I think, 15 races and I've done a couple campaigns for F1. So, I mean, it is through the roof. Like the one in Miami, when I tell you, it's like a circus and that happens to have a race. You don't even have to watch I would say less than half, maybe 50% of the people don't even watch the race. You're just at the pop-up activations that are going on, every major alcohol, just a lot of brands. There's a lot of money that goes into these F1 events. I mean, they are spectacular. So that still does move the needle a lot. But yeah, I mean, and then you go back to like Taylor Swift, like look what Bad Bunny did for his residency in Puerto Rico. I mean, he lifted the whole GDP of the country. It was just crazy.
It's almost like these niche, and not that Taylor Swift and Bad Bunny are niche by any means, but like, folks that have these like cult followings, like I think F1 is maybe like the best example right now. It's like people that could care less about racing at all that I know, like, are obsessed with F1, and they're flying to Vegas. They're like they're like literally trying to like collect them all, so to speak, right? And I think that it's interesting to just see this as a strategy. Skiff put out a pretty cool mega trend this week that I didn't have on our docket, but I could share in the comment or in the show notes for folks. But all specifically about music events and how music, I guess, has like surpassed sports relevancy with respect to like demand, like demand that it creates for travel to specific locations. Obviously, they talked about Taylor Swift, but they also talked about Bad Bunny. But they talked about lots of other like niche artists, like they can move the GDP of a particular town, right, or a third tier market. That I thought was super interesting. So I think like events very much still do contribute and drive demand. The question is like, what are the events of the future that will do that? And is it really like the World Cups and the Olympics, or maybe not so much?
One last thought before Edwin chimes in. I don't think the F1 movement has even begun. I think it's going to get so much bigger, so much more aggressive marketing, more cities. I just think the needle hasn't even started to move yet.
Hot take. I love it. Edwin, any final thoughts on this story, man?
Yeah, I mean, football or soccer, if you will, is not in the genes of Americans, right? Not yet. It compared to South American countries, compared to so many other countries, people were raised with football, with soccer.
Of course.
So there's one difference. So you need the foreign visitors to come to the U.S. to fill up these hotels and to fill up the stadiums. You don't fly out for one match. You know, it's not a Taylor Swift concert. You want to go see your country, and then you want to tag on another match and another match because there's progression, hopefully, for your country, right? The U.S. is expensive, and we talked about this before, and I think you guys were a bit skeptic on, when we talked about the incremental prices of park fees. But if you move you and your partner or your mates to a football game, you need to fly across the world, right? You need to fly across the pond. Prices are surging at the moment with fuel. Some people. Unlike, Scott, I know these are sometimes very last minute decisions, but a lot of times you need to plan. If you're going to take a week or two off, you need to plan holidays. Right? So you would have purchased your ticket. If then fuel prices increase for travel within the US, because, figure this in, when football was around in Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, you could drive or take a train between the different stadiums. Here, from south to north to east to west, to Toronto, to Mexico, I mean, you'd be driving all day long and all night long, right? So it just becomes a very different event versus three tiny little countries. In this case, if Texas and California and another state would hold the World Cup, you'd be able to drive in between. So the whole thing just changed. And then, of course, with the politics at the moment and the war, I understand why a lot of people are saying, hold off, I'm not going to go. The whole thing just becomes too expensive. Things are double the price often in the United States versus, European countries or South American countries. But then again, football fanatics, sometimes a little thing loose, and they can still make crazy decisions. And if things die down and the Middle East becomes, in the next 2 months, calms down, people might still take that last minute decision and get on a plane, because the real fanatics, they'll do crazy things to support their country.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys, before we go to Splice of the Week, just wanted to call this fun little LinkedIn post. Fun stuff I saw on social media this week is a segment that we do from time to time here. And I thought this one by Samantha Shankman was great. Ben, I don't know if you saw this, but Samantha is friend of the pod. Runs in a lot of the same circles that Ben, Isaac French, etc. Run in. I've been impressed by her content. I don't think I've ever actually met her, to be honest, but we've talked on social a few times. But she put out a cool little, I think it was originally a TikTok or an Instagram reel, but that she posted on LinkedIn, basically positing like what would Hoxton in farm country look like? And I thought what was interesting about this post in particular, or at least what inspired me to think about, is whether or not there's this idea of any legs to the idea of a hotel in a city having like an outpost, right? Like 45 minutes, an hour or so outside of the city. So you can imagine like there's the Hoxton and then there's like the Hoxton outpost or something that's in, rural country somewhere. But the catch being, and the differentiator being, that it's got to be within like 45 minutes to an hour of the primary hotel or resort, but it allows the brand to scale like some of their operations, right? So there's some economies of scale of like it being an hour or so drive away, but offers like a very different experience for the traveler. And you can imagine situations where folks might stay in the city for 3 days at the Hoxton and then go to the outpost for 2 days, right? Or and experience what a farm to table farm hospitality might look like. So I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on the video, if you thought it was cool or interesting. We've talked about, Ben in particular, you're all about farm hospitality. I know you and Scott now are on the board of an organization that is really bullish on this. It's certainly popping up everywhere that I'm seeing on social as kind of the next big wave. What do you think about, if you're a brand, right, who, let's just maybe stick with Hoxton, for example, who has some credibility, who is quite established, and you want to get into this space? Think that the idea of the outpost has any scale or any legs? Has anything like this, to your guys' knowledge, been done before?
So look, I love Sam. I do know her personally, and we are colleagues in this farm hospitality movement, I like to think. I actually thought it was interesting. Her post and the TikTok video were a bit different in terms of the framing, right? The TikTok video is like, the Hoxton, meets farm hotel sort of brand extension. And the post was more about like trust layer and, having these farm hotels 75 minutes from a major city, but it almost sounded more in line with like what she's doing, which is the farm hospitality collection. So could be more independent branded, not necessarily like an offshoot of an urban brand hotel, which is where I think it is going and should continue to go, more so in this like, independent brand, have your own story that's, very strong sense of place for that farm, for that landscape, for that area. With that said, look, I think Soho Farmhouse is probably like the best example. It's more members club, right? But I think that's the best example of this working. It's also like 2 hours away, which I don't think is necessarily an issue, to be a little farther to get a more amazing landscape, better agriculture, whatever it is, getting farther out from the city. We've thought about actually doing this the other ways at some point down the line with Baya, actually. So Baya is by nature more, my farm hotel brand is more of this like 1 to 2 hours from major city farm hotel concept. But could we have like a wellness with farm to table cuisine at more of an urban style location that was like a sister brand to Baya? So we've considered it. I think there's an opportunity there. With all that said, I hope that I hope that these properties stay more, at least independent feeling, more story driven, more unique, and don't just become like a unified, standardized big brand that's an extension of some other urban brand.
Well said. Scott, your thoughts?
Yeah. But don't you think, Ben, I too watched the video on TikTok and on LinkedIn. Don't you think that those different posts were made because the different platforms has different personalities? I think it was targeted towards, you know 100%. What I mean?
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I thought both of them made sense.
It was optimized for TikTok. No, I totally understand why she posted that on TikTok.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thought it was interesting, pairing that with the LinkedIn post, which is a slightly different framing, right?
Yeah.
Like the Hoxton Farm Hotel is way more like TikTok-y than
sure.
a more nuanced LinkedIn version, which is, more about the Farm Hospitality Collective. But I think it's nuanced perspectives. Yeah.
I think that the combination is exactly how people want to travel today. But brands are missing this because they focus on consistency and design instead of consistency and emotion. Guests don't want identical hotels. They want a familiar feeling that shows up differently depending on where they are. Different architecture, different food, different people, same emotional connection. And that's where independents win because they're rooted in place. The problem is the second big brands try to scale this, they standardize it. And the moment they do that, they kill what made it special. You cannot systemize soul. Now, here's the thing. Here's where it gets interesting. The kind of connected but not controlled network is powerful. It's not about one brand dictating everything. It's about shared values across different properties. That's how modern travelers think. They don't trust logos anymore. They trust experiences. And if someone figures out how to scale that without turning it into a cookie cutter product, that's the $1 billion business.
Well, and to your point, I think that's why I think the Outpost idea is sort of interesting is like, it's so different than Marriott. Marriott tries to get into the outdoor hospitality space by buying Getaway, right? Like, and there's these acquisitions that happen, and or even if they were to have built something themselves, it's a very different experience.
Correct.
Whereas if you're branding it and if you're able, there's zillions of factors of why this would be a terrible idea and really hard to pull off. But if you could pull it off, right, of like, hey, there is the core hotel in the urban market, but then there's like, again, the Outpost or whatever the hell you want to call it. I think that experiment. I think Sohouse Ben is probably like the best example, or the only one I really know of that's kind of experimented with something like this. But I have to believe that this is a model that could work and maybe actually be an easier pitch to investors than just buying an outdoor brand and or trying to build your own outdoor brand from the ground up. Edwin, I'm curious to get your take.
Yeah, look, I truly believe in this. I was actually working on a concept together with a colleague last year of opening hotels in secondary, tertiary cities and having a little outpost, but very individually credible properties in these cities. My colleague went on to do something much bigger. So that went nowhere. But so a house is a great example. There are individual properties, I don't know if you guys heard of the Mitchellberger Hotel in Berlin, that are incredibly well positioned within local community, incredible on programming, on culture, and they bought a farm outside of town. So you have your audience, you have your local community, you have your neighborhood who's using your hotel, and then it makes total sense. And I think there's there would be a big appetite for those people who use your hotel as your workplace, as your community source, as your programming on the Tuesday and Wednesday night, to then use that outdoor property an hour outside of a city for weekends. I get that. I think it's great. Whether that should be a big brand, I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's a huge possibility for a lot of locations globally to do this.
Well, good post, Sam, and keep posting great content. Let's go to Spice of the Week, gentlemen. Ben, I know you are ready with one, so let's go to you first.
Did you know that I was ready? You just assumed that I was ready with one.
Well, you said at the top of the hour, you were like, I got to save this for Spice of the Week. I was like,
you're right. Oh, okay, I guess I did. Yeah, I think hoteliers need to focus more on demand generation and less on just trying to capture what's already available in the market, right? Focus less on just cost controls, standardization, ticking boxes, and more on how do we actually manufacture demand. And I think that way too few hotel developers, owners, operators are thinking along these lines. Maybe it's shifting a bit. I hope it continues to shift in that direction. I think the numbers are pretty clear in terms of what's working today. We're actually rolling out a Modern Hospitality Accelerator coaching program where we teach hotel owners and operators how to manufacture demand, increase high value direct bookings, and build pricing power in today's market. So I think there's a huge need for this. And we want to try to teach more owners, developers, operators, marketing teams how to do this.
I love it, dude. That's awesome. And I think that especially, right, in some ways, it's never been easier to test demand creation, right, with agentic AI. Like you can just experiment with way more and run and like for very, very, very low costs. And that's going to solve everything. But I do think like now is the time to experiment with like how you become a demand generator in and of yourself, which is wildly exciting. Edwin, Scott, anyone?
I'm ready.
You want to go next? Scott,
I'm ready, baby.
Go.
So most hotels are still built around operations instead of emotions. Everything is efficient, everything is functional, but nothing makes you feel anything. And if the hotel doesn't create emotional reaction within the first 5-10 minutes, you've already lost. The industry is addicted to playing it safe. And that's why most properties are forgettable. Everyone is benchmarking each other instead of actually competing for attention, which means the entire middle of the market is just copying the same ideas and slowly becoming irrelevant at scale. Just like what you said, Zach. Yes, now it's easier than ever to test certain things. I also think it's easier than ever, and you lose relevance faster than we've ever lost in the past. I think you lose market share faster than we've ever lost it in the past because competition is fierce.
That's well said. Double click on that, man. I love it. Edwin, how about you, sir?
So we've been talking a lot about hotel restaurants or hotel F&B, about hotels that are relevant in towns. And my spice of the week is really a question to all the listeners, because we're the four of us are on different parts of the world. We see what we see in our areas, but I'd be very interested to know from our listeners, if you live in a town or you've just been to a town and you use a hotel restaurant or a hotel bar that really works, where that perfect balance of the local scene, the local neighbors use that space, and it's mixed with tourists or people who come for business, and it just creates that right vibe. Could you drop that hotel or the restaurant name in the comments? Because I'd be very interested to understand what's happening in the world, because we have our own perception of these things from our travels, but I'd be very keen to understand which properties work, and then maybe have a look to see if those are independents or if these hotels belong to bigger groups, and take it from there. So if you're going to eat out, or you have eaten out, or you're a big fan of a hotel food and beverage venue, whether it's a bar or a restaurant, drop it in the comments and let us know.
Well said. My little spice of the week, Scott, since we talked about cruises over the last couple weeks, I don't know if it's just because, our phones listen to everything we say, but I've been hit with like all these ads and really more like, I don't know, like native story ads that are talking about the state of the cruise industry. So I've been going on a little bit of a deep dive here. Apparently the average age of cruisers has dropped by 15 years.
Yeah, easily.
In just the last 5 years, right?
Yeah,
15
easily.
years on average, which that's significant, right?
Yeah.
And like these articles, Travel Weekly, a few others have talked about this recently, but they posit it's because of the rise of these like more luxury cruise lines, right? We've got the Ritz, right? We've got Aman at Sea launching and whatnot. Anyways, so spice of the week is, if this is a thing that's going to happen, it's going to be huge. If it drops 15 years in 5 years, if they even get that to like the 30s and 40s, I think right now it's like it dropped from like the average of 55 or so to like 40. But if it goes sub 40, that is significant. And so the prediction is we'll just see more branded cruise lines. Like, yes, of course, there'll be the Norwegians and the Disneys, et cetera, but we'll probably see a niche yacht strategy pop up for even maybe smaller collections. Obviously, Aman's doing this and whatnot. The Ritz is obviously, doing this via Marriott, but potentially it paves the way for people to justify the investment in a more boutique brand at sea. So I'd love to see that happen. Very hard to pull off from a logistics standpoint, but
Zach,
trends are going in the right direction. Yeah.
A soft lifestyle cruise line.
A soft lifestyle cruise.
Hard lifestyle, please. Hard luxury.
Hard luxury. Oh, I love our adjectives in this industry. All right, gentlemen, thank you for the time this week. As always, everyone tuning in, thank you for tuning in to another episode of your favorite podcast, This Week in Hospitality. Comment about what you liked on the show. Subscribe to the show if you are not already. Share it with somebody in the industry that you work with this week. And if you got ideas for who we should have on the show or things you want us to talk about, just holler at us individually or in the comments below. Edwin, Ben, Scott, thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us this week. If any part of today's conversation sparked an idea or helped you think differently about the industry, we'd love to continue the conversation. You can find each of us on LinkedIn, on X, on Instagram, or whatever your preferred social platform of choice is. Links to all of our profiles are in the show notes below. This Week in Hospitality is presented by Journey. Journey is a loyalty platform built specifically for independent boutique hotels and high-touch hospitality brands. Our mission is to give operators the same powerful rewards engine, data intelligence, and guest insights that major chains rely on, without asking them to give up the individuality, the soul, and the story that makes their property so exceptional. At a moment when travelers are craving unique, meaningful experiences and operators are navigating rising OTA costs, fragmented data, and shifting expectations, Journey provides a unified ecosystem that strengthens guest relationships, increases direct bookings, and helps independent properties thrive on their own terms. We're building a global, curated alliance of exceptional hotels, villas, and residences, a network that rewards exploration, empowers individuality, and gives independents the scale that they deserve. If you're an owner or operator of an extraordinary independently owned and operated hotel or residence, and if you want to see whether your property is a fit for the Journey Alliance, you can learn more and apply at alliance.journey.com. All right, friends, we'll see you next Friday. Until then, keep building experiences that are worth remembering.